Live.
Oop.
On
Divinyls. Steve!
Yeah!
The Divinyls.
The Divinyls sing that song? You said Sinead O'Connor?
I did.
Nothing compares to you.
Right.
We
Came out
are
of the
still
US
not
by
live on
Sting.
Insta. Wait a minute. Yes, Justin.
Little trivia for you.
All right, guys. Today's live feed is about seasonal changes. And in order to talk about these seasonal changes that go on, we're going to have to talk to Justin Smith.
Seasonal changes, Steve.
Yes.
Does that have to do with, I don't know, spring cleaning?
Could have to do with Chase's hygiene. Could have to do with a bunch of other
Spring
stuff
cleaning,
too.
so
Yep.
underwear
Yep.
once a week?
Yeah,
And seasonal?
Seasonal would be he does flip it inside and out too, so you can get
Oh, so he
2
gets 2
days
weeks
out
out
of
of
one pair. Yeah, easily.
I see. How about, I don't know, the sheets or other things in the house? Is it seasonal things like that?
Could be seasonal, and if you don't wash them, what happens, Justin?
I don't know. It could possibly fall off.
Could
Usually,
possibly
if you don't wash stuff, then you have issues like that.
Yeah. Use it or lose it.
I'm guessing this is going to be a good one. This may not be as Tech Tuesday as we want it to be. It might be more throw it out there Tuesday than it is Tech Tuesday. But what we are trying to point out is that, number one, it's going to be like 92 degrees here in Phoenix today. So it reminded us that the seasons are changing. And when it comes to UTVs and where you ride, where you drive, and how you do it, it might be a seasonal change on where you're going to take your UTV and the things you want to do to set the thing up for the next direction that you're going to go, and also what you're going to want to do to prep it. So seasonal changes when it comes to your UTV. Now, out here in Arizona, usually it's UTVs in the winter, and as soon as it gets like today, you're going to go boats. And you're going boats to Lake Havasu or Parker or wherever it is.
Woohoo!
But a lot of us don't jump from UTV to boat. We go UTV to UTV. We just change them where we're going to go. So maybe you're, from a local standpoint, maybe you're in the dunes all season in the winter. But as soon as it turns into summer, then you're going to go up into the mountains like Flagstaff or Prescott for us. Other parts of the country, in California, you might also be dunes. You might end up going up to Big Bear. You might go to Mammoth or Reno, Nevada, or whatever higher mountain elevations, get away from the heat. On the East Coast, you might be heater inside your closed cab, whatever you're driving, in the snow, maybe even tracks, which, Steve, you dealt with tracks the other day.
I did.
Yeah, we might have to talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
But you get out of the winter, and all of a sudden you're going to go back into summer, and you're going to go trail riding. You're going to go trail riding, and you're going to go maybe mudding. So there's big differences between the directions that you run your UTV when it comes to seasons. Now, what we have the most experience with is what we're going to start with.
Tried to get him.
And that is going to be going from desert high speed and dunes to mountain trail elevation. There's a lot to change there. Number one, the obvious. We're going to go sand tire to a dirt tire. But I'm going to stay out of the obvious, and we're going to go into a little bit of the prep that you should think about when you're working on it. Matt, what do you got there, Matt?
Kevin Walsh says, don't forget to swap your winter air for your summer air in your tires.
Oh, this is right. Sort of like the nitrogen thing, right? You know,
If you don't do that, it could fall off.
That's right. Typically, if you don't check anything on your UTV, it's going to fall off, and that's kind of what our theme is today.
Is that what happened to your undershirt? Bad Habits Racing is wanting to know, Justin. Are you wearing that button up with no undershirt? Good Lord.
That's a fact. I might have raw nips at the end of this video.
That's a seasonal change.
His nips might fall off.
My nips might fall off due to that. It's freaking 90 degrees outside. I don't need an undershirt. And by the way, I sometimes wear deodorant, unlike Chase.
This is true.
So,
Learn something new every day.
but let's walk around the shop. Let's find a couple of vehicles here. Funny that I say vehicle instead of car. How about UTV?
Justin, we have a sensational question on here.
Sensational
It's a
question?
sensational
What is a
question.
sensational
People want to know how many seasons will they be able to ride the Speed UTV in?
Oh, you know what? Currently, that's going to be all seasons, every season, no matter how many seasons.
Our customers
Because
are so funny.
I have not driven one, and I cannot tell you anything about a Speed UTV. Robbie, I know that you're testing in Parker. Give me a call. That way we can put this all to bed and I won't have to get these questions all the time that I can't answer. Let's see what we got flying around here. So there is a X3 with sand tires.
There's two of them.
Actually, two sand tire cars. So what I'm trying to say here is both of these vehicles have been in the sand for the winter season. They're here getting all of their work done. You know what they're gonna do probably next week? Not go to the sand, because they're gonna end up going up an elevation, because right now, 90 degrees around here, it's gonna go up into the mountains. We're gonna go trail riding. So some of the things that all UTVs should probably see when it comes to prep. What if you are going from sand to mountain? What do you want to change on your car? First, you're going to want to check a few things on it. Number one, double check all of the radius rod joints. This might be a bad example because it's a Super ATV. Let's go back to these. Chase, on here, you're going to want to check rod ends on all of these because they can be loose. Make sure this is up. I'll check it. Let's see what this one looks like. Tire, we got shocks off of it. Typically, you're going to grab a tire, you're going to shake it top to bottom. Oh, look at what I found. We did not even plan this at all, Steve. You know what happens when you don't check any of the stuff on your car?
It's going to fall off.
There it is. So, take a look. Right here. Chase, can you actually see up in there good enough? All right, watch that rod end shake back and forth. Can you guys even hear that?
Oh, yeah.
That's a pretty good one. So, the rod ends on these radius rods are worn out from the season. And that's a typical thing that you're going to want to check because it's a high wearing item. It sees a ton of load. It doesn't matter if it's a bone stock radius rod here or if it's an aftermarket one like this with rod ends on it. It doesn't matter whose rod ends, whose radius rods are on that thing. Because if you do not check the radius rods like I am right now, I will guarantee you one thing, Matt, what's going to happen?
It's going to fall off.
That's right. So another thing that you can do, if you don't know where the rattle is, let's say we're all wondering where this noise is, you can put your finger on the hardware and you can put your finger on the body of the rod end, and I guarantee you, you will feel in your finger where the loose part is because your finger can tell the difference between the body and the hardware that doesn't move, and it will tell you where it's loose. Steve.
Hey, Justin, while your finger's on the rod, does it feel like it's going to fall off?
You know what? Typically, if my finger is on the rod, it's getting used.
Oh, okay.
Which means it's getting checked. And if you check your stuff, it will definitely not fall off.
God.
So
Can that rod handle a heavy load?
this rod right here, I'm going to say can handle, I'm going to say a medium load and maybe a medium speed. But if you had our radius rods on here with a 3/4 inch rod end on it instead of 5/8, it could handle a high load at a very high rate of speed. So you're gonna have to check it a little bit less. And if you check it less, it's probably not gonna fall off if it was ours. I'm just gonna say. So what else can we check on? Let's go to the other side. So no prep here. Sorry, we do zero show prep. Is this a show or is this a feed?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yes.
One or the other?
I think it's both.
Or both. Okay. Let's see what we got over here. Sway bar's loaded on this side. Oh, hold on. I'm picking up both sides. Let's do hub. So left to right or in and out. In and out, that's funny. Yeah, I said Matt's over there laughing his ass off. Chase can't hold himself back.
In and out animal style.
If you go forward to back, usually you're going to check whether the hub bearing is bad. If you go up and down on the rear, you're going to find any of the radius rods. So let's lift this up. You can see. Funny, but thanks, Mitch. This side doesn't have anything that's worn out. It's only the other side. So just because you have one side worn out doesn't mean that the other one could have a problem. But I guarantee you, if you don't check both sides, then at least one thing is going to happen. And what is that, Steve?
It's going to fall off.
That's right. If you don't check it, you're done.
It'll fall off.
Let's go to the front. Other things you guys want to check when you're going from season to season, you need to make sure you're looking at all the pivot points on all the control arms. That's going to be bushings, upper and lower. You're going to want to check all the steering components, and you're going to want to check upper and lower ball joints. So let's do that real quick. So really quick, by shaking it back and forth, the only thing that I can feel on this car is a little bit of steering. I can feel some movement right here. I don't know if you can see that, Chase. It's a very small amount.
Very little.
But that's something that I probably wouldn't be changing at this level, but it's something that you're gonna want to watch, because if you don't check it on a regular basis, Matt, what happens?
It's going to fall off.
That's right. So on this car, we've checked rear radius rod joints. We've checked rear hubs by going front to back on the hubs. Steve, what else have we checked?
Oh, we checked loads and rods, but my question is, so if someone's stock rack was out, what could they do to fix that, Justin?
Oh, thank you for the shameless plug. Let's go over here. We did not even prep this, I promise.
I try and find it every time I can get.
Thanks, Steve.
You got
Well,
it.
right here, Chase, would be billet race racks. So if you have any steering problems on your Polaris or on your X3, then we have race racks that'll take care of all that worn out stuff. Another thing that we can shamelessly plug right into,
You're
Steve, watch
welcome.
this,
You're welcome, Justin.
is we have billet race racks for a Polaris General XP, as well as Polaris General Standard Early Model. Matt, check out the surprised look on his face. This is because I didn't tell you that we had them, right, Matt?
Right? And I get these questions a lot.
Okay, so we now currently have the XP, the early General billet race rack, and we have XP General or General XP racks in stock. It's not because we made brand new racks, it's because we figured out that the racks we are already making work.
Sweet.
So,
Hey, Chase, if they're looking for those things, you can go to www.shocktherapist.com. You're welcome.
and so back to things that we want to check on this. So we've checked rear hub bearings, we've checked rear radius rods, we have checked the pivot points in the front, so front control arm bushings. Usually you're going to see an obvious thing in the front bushings. It's going to clunk back and forth inside the mount. Upper lower ball joints, if you grab the tire and move vertically, you're going to feel ball joints. If you move the tire vertically, grabbing the top and bottom and moving it, and you feel something moving, it could be upper or lower ball joints, or it could be the hub bearing. The way you know the difference is, again, grab your finger, Chase, and put your finger between two things that aren't going to move. So if it's a hub bearing, you want to touch the rotor and you want to touch the lower control arm. If the bearing in the hub is the problem, they're going to see the rotor and the arm are going to space apart, and you're going to feel that with your finger. If it is a ball joint, you're going to put your finger right here. Chase, you can actually see this finger right here. You're going to put your finger between the spindle and the upper arm. See the finger right here, Chase?
Got it. Get it.
Okay, got it. And then you're going to shake it, and you're going to see if you got some movement. Chase, is there anything that you typically shake and see if you have movement?
You know, occasionally, but not often. My mom always told me not to play with things or they fall off.
Well, you know what happens when you don't play with it, Chase? Steve?
It falls off.
Typically.
Justin, I have a really good question from Robbie Frazier. Do you have to have the shocks off to check this stuff?
You do not. The reason that the shocks are off is because we're working on this vehicle, but you do not have to have the shocks off to do this. Just make sure it's jacked up to where the tires are off the ground, so you have the movement and the ability to grab the tire without it sitting on the ground with load on it. So shocks can be on it. Do we have any shocks on that one? We can just do the same thing?
Before we move from this one, Justin, I got a
Okay, what do you
question,
got,
because
Steve?
I get this question all the time. It is not in the feed. How do you check axles? What's the best way to check them if you're gonna go from there?
So
Is
it's
it
actually a really, really good question, because
I get that all the time.
there's almost no way to check the axle without taking the boots off and looking on the inside. Usually, let's go to the back of this again. I'm not sure if we can spin. How about this one? So since this is off the ground, if you spin can you pull it out of Matt? Can you put it in neutral? If you spin the assembly when it's jacked, up off the ground, and you can hear noise or clunking. Is that neutral? Nope. Keep going. I'll get it for you.
It's got a fancy thing
Park.
up here.
Nope. Oh, it's on the ground in the front and four-wheel drive. So never mind.
Okay.
We'll grab another one.
I didn't know
What you want to do is spin the wheel and tire, and if you can feel the axle clunking on the way as it spins around, then that's a good sign that you've got axle issues and you should address them, either buy new ones or service and prep them. When it comes to race car stuff, we typically are not going to feel the problem by rotating it. We're going to have to pull the boots off and inspect it. If we're going to pull the boots off and inspect it, then we're already 90% of the way through the work, so we're just going to end up changing everything and throwing grease in it. If you've got a low horsepower car, like stock, usually axles aren't an issue. If you've got a high horsepower car and a lot of traction, like a big paddle, then I would be going through axles and looking at them every year. Chase.
McCoy Racing 1981. Have you ever thought about producing axles, Justin?
No, we will never produce axles. You know why? Because there's about 10 people that produce axles. You can buy them from them. We're going to stay out of it. We want to stay in our little wheelhouse that we're happy with. Plus, there's some really amazing axles made and no reason for us to try and reinvent that wheel. Usually we're only going to make parts that can be improved. Right now, not in the axle area. So, we talked about this one more time. In the back, we got radius rods, we checked those. Talked about axles, rotate them. We've got rear hubs, we've got front hubs, we've got front A-arm or at least suspension pivot points, check hardware, check bushings. We've also got steering, checking the rack. Another thing that you want to check, probably not on this one because it's got brand new everything. How about this one? You're going to want to check sway bar links. These are stock, but one way to check sway bar links is by tipping the vehicle side to side. If you do one side left to right, then it loads those links both directions and you're going to find one that's loose. Maybe if they're worn out or low quality rod ends, you're going to find it squeaking. That squeak is a telltale sign. You can also find out which rod end it is by making it squeak and then touching it with your fingers. Sometimes it'll go quiet when you touch it on both sides. And Chase, that's not unlike your last boyfriend, I would imagine, right?
This is very true. He squeaked a lot more, actually.
Okay. Now, another thing that's very, very true when it comes to sway bar links is if you don't check this stuff quite often, then I guarantee you one thing. Matt, what's going to happen?
It's gonna fall off.
Definitely going to fall off. Not unlike Chase's masculinity.
We got Nitro Redneck Hubert. I think he's one to either know what we're doing for fires from seasonal changes, or he's saying we're on fire.
We are on fire. What's up, Hubert?
As well as from the past, he noticed when a razor, you could feel and slightly hear loose ball joints. Can-Am seemed to last longer. I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Early ball joints in the Polaris stuff was a little bit shorter lasting. The ball joints that are in the Can-Am stuff factory last longer. Case in point, our pre-runner uses factory ball joints and factory control arms on our original pre-runner. We did change lower arms about every 3,000 miles because with the bend in the lower arm, they're a little bit weak. And we do change ball joints about every 1,000 pre-run miles. We've never broken one, but I've also never run one 3,000 or 4,000 miles to find out. So again, if you don't check things and you're not changing things, I guarantee you something is going to happen. Steve.
It is gonna fall off.
That's right. So please, everybody, check your stuff. If you're not the type to check it, pay someone to check it. Because if you do not,
If you don't check it yourself, get a second opinion. You know what I'm saying?
oh, 2 fingers. Excellent.
Yeah. Parallel park.
Yep. Looked like you had a question there, Steve. Nope. How about you, Matt? Matt's over there. Matt?
J-Hub's
just over there breathing.
So rack play is a bad thing?
Rack play is a bad thing. So rack play directly is related to the amount of play in the steering wheel. So if the rack has some play in it, then the steering wheel is going to have a lot of play back and forth before it actually moves or steers your UTV. Rack play does not get better. Rack play always gets worse. So when you see a little bit, make sure you're checking it. When you see more, then you need to be changing the rack or buy one of our billet racks to cure it. Mitch, because if you do not check stuff like rack play,
It's gonna fall off.
yeah, for sure.
Mitch, don't sound so enthusiastic.
Jordan wants to know if we sell our radius rod ends separately and how much are they.
Mitch, you can answer that.
It depends on what car. If it's 5/8 or 3/4, the price difference is varied.
I think it's like 24 or 30 bucks, something like that. So
Something
between
like
20 and
that.
$30 depending on the rod end, but we do sell them.
Yes, we do. And they are where, Steve?
On the website, www.shocktherapist.com.
Matt, what do you
That
got?
was a shameless plug. I like that. He got
Can't
me.
rack play get better after maybe some enhancement?
Rack play?
It's a Band-Aid.
That's a weird rack play.
What? So describe.
rack play.
He's going rack.
He's going bolt-ons.
Bolt-on racks, yes.
And here I was thinking you were serious. Or
You know what? Actually, rack play and enhancement. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good,
that's
Matt.
a good job. We were all too slow. Sorry, we didn't catch on. I appreciate
trying.
that. You know what? Another thing is very, very true. If you do not play with that rack, what's going to happen?
It's gonna fall off.
That's right.
Fall off.
So everybody play with your rack.
Justin, there is a question on here. It says, if I ordered limit straps today, how long for them to ship? I believe 7 to 10. Are we 7 to 10 days right
I
now?
think that it is, and let me explain why, you guys, okay? Let me explain. Let's walk over to shipping right now. One of the reasons that we're standing out here is we want to show you what's going on.
I'm in shipping.
Oh, yeah.
I said,
Come over
I'm
here.
shipping at the moment.
You guys, this is what you're looking at. This is our shipping area with multiple guys. Everyone's running around with their head cut off, except for Matt, who's got a hat. He's good to go.
All the carts.
But, Chase, these carts, shipping area for boxing, spring kit, spring kit, spring kit, spring kit, double stacked. You got, actually, this is actually 2 spring kits, you guys.
So this is
this
1,
is
2,
4.
3, 4. There's 8 spring kits per cart. Plus,
That's 8 spring. Yeah, you're right. Sorry,
That's 8
I'm sorry.
spring
4
kits per
top and
cart.
bottom. So 8 spring kits per cart. Lost my. Couldn't even talk. 8 spring kits per cart. And sway bars and radius rods ready to go. You guys, we are trying as hard as we can. We are definitely behind. All of these parts are getting shipped every single day as fast as we can. Take a look out that door, Chase. UPS is dropping off and picking up 3 times a day. So,
hey, Dana.
hi, Dana. So you're shipping a lot of stuff when you're on first name basis with all of our UPS guys. Let me narrow it down. We're behind in shipping. We are bringing on guys daily. We are improving how fast we ship. Right now we ship about 150 to 160 boxes a day.
Easily.
We are still about 300 or 400 orders behind. So we are telling everybody that we are about 7 days out. We are trying to do that in about half the time, but it can be up to that, no problem. Please be patient. Everything will go out no matter what. What else you got?
I can't even ask the question. It says my wife is a 34 triple D. What size shock therapy shirt should she need?
34 triple D.
Jesus.
I don't know. I'm gonna go. I'm going to go with extra small because I'm telling you, you would like to see that, wouldn't everybody?
I
else?
wouldn't be upset with that. Yes, extra small, sir.
Okay, perfect advice. And also, if you do not use those properly,
They will fall off.
that's right. So, how about this? One thing that we didn't talk about, and we don't have anything apart for you guys to take a look at, but when you're doing your prep from seasonal change to seasonal change, it's a perfect time to look at the belt. If you haven't blown belts on a regular basis, then you should be changing that belt. And I'm not talking about, Matt, the belt on your pants. Okay.
Does he even wear a belt?
He is. Yes, he is.
Down there.
Okay. I'm talking about CVT belt. You guys, belts don't last forever. If you want to leave them on there forever, they definitely will blow up. So on a regular basis, certainly every single seasonal change, you should be pulling that outside cover off this thing. You should be changing that belt out. But in addition to that, you should be blowing it out with compressed air. Make sure you have no dust and debris in there. All that dust and debris gums up parts that should be moving. Parts that move keep belts alive. As soon as parts start getting gummed up, then belts blow up. And if you do not,
So Justin, you're saying if you don't blow it, it'll fall off.
you've got an excellent point. If you don't blow it and blow it good,
Yeah, it's got to be a
there's
good
a very good chance that will definitely fall off. So, yeah, Mitch, got a lot of hands.
Jesus Christ. Super awesome Rockin' Dad wants to know what about elevation changes? How would you address that?
Wow, good question.
There's multiple
Great
things.
question.
So when you go up in elevation, it's going to make less power. Typically, if you really are concerned about those changes, then you're going to want to make clutch changes, which would be a spring and weights that would cure your RPM changes from high altitude to low altitude. Other things you could change would be not altitude related, but because you're going up into the mountains, typically you're going to have less compression in the shock adjustment than you will when you're down in the lower elevations like dunes or high-speed desert. So we didn't talk about this yet, but if you do not adjust those shocks, I guarantee you, Matt, what's going to happen?
It's gonna fall off.
Guaranteed to fall off. So
I was waiting for Chase to get all the way around.
he
to
did a
figure out where I
360 in the wrong direction,
was.
which
It's like wrong
made it,
people.
made it like a 720. So in dunes, high speed, desert, especially dunes where the big G-outs and jumps are going to be, you're going to have high compression adjustments, or at least stiffer. When you get up into the mountains and trails, or back east, if you get into mud as opposed to snow, then it's going to be a little bit on the softer side. On mountains and trails, you're going to want to have the compression set on the soft side as opposed to the stiff side in earlier seasons. Matt.
Danny Coakley just wanted to say, first time I got to watch this live, because unlike Chase, I work. Thanks for the video, guys.
Danny Coakley.
Coakley.
Danny, I love your style. You kind of nailed Chase in a nutshell. That was like 2 words. Unlike Chase.
Hey!
Is that 3 words? Is unlike 1 word or 2 words?
Unlike is
I can't spell. So
unlike
don't
is
ask
one,
me.
isn't it? Or is there a height? I don't know.
All right, well, he
I don't
nailed it
spell.
with Chase. So, shock adjustments. Let's talk about shocks after you've changed the belt, you've blown out the clutch, you don't have any worn out parts in the clutch that need to be addressed. And I'm not talking to, I'm not covered the obvious, you guys. If you've got a driveline that vibrates, then change it. You've got tires that are worn out, then change them. You've got an axle clicking and a boot that's cracked and blowing grease everywhere, change it. This is the stuff that you don't typically see that you should be checking, because if you do not check it, I guarantee you it will fall off. Oh, there's a 720 to get
Fall
to
off.
Steve.
Justin,
I think Chase is making everybody dizzy. Steve.
we've got a question here. It says, why do my crossover rings rub with my shock therapy springs? I have clocked them every which way possible.
So, first off, crossover rings always rub. No matter what. They are designed to rub, they're gonna rub, period, end of story. It's just a question of how much. So, clocking the springs can mitigate the rubbing. It will never eliminate the rubbing. If you look at a crossover from the outside of the vehicle and you see, hey, that one's not rubbing at all, it's perfectly bitching and there's nothing on it, I guarantee if you look on the inside of it, it's probably rubbing the spring. So, if you want, what you can do is find out where the spring package rubs that crossover and then rotate the whole spring package as a complete unit to the inside, then you won't see it. Usually rubbing finds its happy place and then it doesn't wear it anymore. As an example, typically trophy trucks, like say with a set of King bypasses or something on them, can rub straight through the crossovers in a race, and they will be replacing the crossovers every single race, depending on how the spring rates and looseness of the spring divider, shock body dimensions, a whole bunch of other things like sand and terrain. Mitch.
Factory crossovers rub too.
You get a car with a factory dual rate and it's got Fox crossovers on it, those crossovers rub.
A lot of Can-Am stuff that we see more on the rear than the front. It's always a complaint with the rear that we get that's rubbing, and
I will
that
tell you
all the
why.
time.
Because the rear springs are taller, and the taller the spring is, the more as that spring compresses, the more it bows, and the more a spring bows, the more it can smack the crossover. Also, if you really want to get technical, springs typically have a vibration to them. If you slow motion a spring's compression, you'll find it vibrating left to right. and that vibration left to right as it compresses will smack one side of the crossover or the other in a different direction. There's harmonics involved, and in short, crossovers all rub. Just get used to it, and if you rub through one of ours all the way, then we'll replace it. Don't worry about it. Definitely want to check crossovers all the time, because if you do not check crossovers, Steve, what
They will fall off.
Guaranteed. Matt or Mitch, you guys got more? It looks like you did. So, Chase, why don't you
let's
show
see.
something else while I look at my list?
Wow.
UW4 Ranch wants to know, can we upgrade rework shocks on an XP Pro Dynamics? Yes, we can.
Mitch, go for it.
Valving and springs, sir. Simple.
How much better are those, by the way, Mitch?
I mean, as we always say, valving and springs, that's like the married couple to one another. So you get the benefits of both. Spring kit, ride height increase, carries the weight, able to adjust the ride height. Valving is going to smoothen out the ride quality, basically make you able to go over the whoops and jumps and not have any issues with that side of things too. It was a Dynamics, so not Walker. I was going to say RC2s is a good upgrade
Option,
for
but
that.
not on the Dynamics. Leave those.
Dynamics is perfect. I mean, if you're looking for the valving and spring side of things, that's the way to go for sure.
Okay.
So simple and sweet.
One thing we haven't talked about yet is what to do with shocks when it comes from season to season. So, one thing that you want to check at least once a year, maybe not twice or 3 times a year as you start going to different terrains when it comes to shock, is nitrogen pressure. I would not recommend checking it to see what it is, because the fact that you checked it is going to drop at 20 pounds. I would literally just hit the shocks with 200 psi once a year and call it good. If it's not leaking, then you're typically leaking. If it's not leaking oil, then you're typically not losing any pressure. Steve.
I just want to be very specific on that. Checking it with 200 pounds of nitrogen and using a regulator and the proper tools, not with air.
You
Just
are
so we
correct. I'm sorry, I said that.
No, just so we're very specific on that, because you do not want to put air in your reservoirs.
Yeah, so if you do not have a nitrogen bottle and the correct regulators and things to check it, then find a shop or a dealer of ours that does. Matt, you can tell everybody where the dealers are if they want to email you.
You can email dealers@shocktherapist.com, and I will get back to you as soon as possible.
If you do not check that email, I guarantee you it is going to
Fall off.
That's right, like every other part on your vehicle. Matt,
No, specifically his, yeah.
what do you got, Matt?
J-Hub's asked again, he was asking about the carrier bearing, about checking that.
So carrier bearings are very hard to check. Usually, when you check one, it's not going to show you it's got a problem. It's going to have some movement, but it's not going to have problems until it vibrates and it shows you directly that it's got an issue. So I would drive your car on the road, asphalt, in 2-wheel drive, and then I would put it in 4-wheel drive, and I put it back in 2-wheel drive, and you will feel the difference in what the drive line is going to do for you. Check that on a routine basis, otherwise the drive line will
Fall off.
That's right. So when you see the vibration go from kind of what you've been used to changing it back and forth 2-wheel drive, and all of a sudden it's way worse than it ever was, you need to be looking at the drive line and carrier bearing.
Justin, when checking the nitrogen, do they do that with the vehicle on the ground or jacked up in the air?
Believe it or not, Steve, you can answer that question really well.
You need to jack it up
That's
in
right.
the air.
That's right. Make sure that all nitrogen pressures are checked with the tires off the ground. Make sure that all pressures are added to the shock with the tires off the ground. There's some technical reasons for that. Steve is displaying exactly what those technical reasons are. But
Depending on your jack, too.
that's right. Get the motion of that deal in there. But make sure that all nitrogen is added with the shock fully extended or the tires off the ground. Nitrogen once a year, 200 psi. If you do not have a visible leak on the shaft or anywhere else, then you can run that shock for the next portion of the season. If you've driven the car and all of a sudden it went from not bottoming out to immediately bottoming out everywhere, you've got internal problems, and you would address that with rebuilds on the shock. Steve.
We have a question for Mitch. H2O Blase said, Mitch, how far do you usually have to adjust preload collars after settling springs? And then he said, after the initial 100 miles, I mean?
That varies.
Yeah, it's kind of a loaded question. I've seen kits that we've sent back at our starting points and be nailed. I've seen kits that have to throw an inch to up to 2 inches into them to get the ride heights. Kind of our generic rule of thumb is to get them back, put them on the car, check your ride heights, see where you're at. If you're going above 2 inches, that's kind of a concern. Get in contact with us. We can kind of look at it and see what we got going on.
Maybe bump the rate at 2 inches.
Bump the rate. We're not perfect by any means. I mean, it does happen from time to time that we don't get it perfect. So if it's an issue where you're going above that 2 inches of adding preload to it, contact us. We'll get you figured out. But that's kind of my mark is what I go off of, about 2 inches.
I'm going to add a little bit to that, Mitch. You're spot on the 2 inch number, but there are UTVs that we prefer to have 2 inches of preload into. They work better that way. Mm-hmm. And so this number of 2 inches of added preload would be a problem. It may not be on certain UTVs because we actually set them up to do that. But in general, it's a good rule of thumb. If you add more than 2 inches to it, then we're going to want to change rate, no matter what.
Chase usually likes 2 inches in it.
Chase is a 2 inch kind of guy. Yeah, I mean,
always looking for the extra.
If he doesn't use the 2 inches, I guarantee you what's going to happen, Matt.
It's gonna fall off.
Yeah, that's right.
Already has, Matt. Already has.
So typically, though, you're not adding that much preload to a car. I mean, with all the notes and everything that you guys give us, we're pretty spot on for the most part. You might be adding like 3/4 to maybe an inch of preload to the system just to get it where you need it to.
And an inch and a half isn't a problem, but
right.
2 inches, we're going to start making questions.
And an important thing with that, make sure you guys are in the car. You have all the weight in it. You have the passengers. You have everything that you gave us in the notes in the car when you're checking that, because that's a big problem too. If you're putting all that stuff in it and you're driving the car back and forth, stopping, and then you get out of the car and measure it, that's an issue too.
Yeah.
So make sure you have everything in there. Make sure that if you are above the 2 inches, that it is actually above that, and then we can figure something out if it is really that far off.
Brad Truelove did send us an address for that small shirt, as well as he wants to know, can side-by-side cars be aligned at a common alignment shop or a specialty operation?
Well, that's also a loaded question, but yes, most do. I know that 4-Wheel Parts does a lot, but we have like a local shop right down the road that'll do it. So it all depends on your area. But yes,
you know what?
A regular shop could.
UTVs and anything else that's got
Super
4
easy.
wheels on it is something that any alignment shop can do. Whether they want to do it or not is another story. I mean, you go to, I don't know, what's a Pep Boys or
they're probably not going to
like
want to
that,
do it.
or that's kind of nationwide. They may not want to touch it because they don't know what they're looking at, but they can definitely do it. So just check around, that's for sure. Matt.
Oh, I was just laughing.
West
You
Coast.
thought he was excited because you're breathing heavy?
He gave me the. What's the name of the foam thing again? It's a
Dead cat.
discriminator.
A dead cat.
Oh, we need a dead cat for Matt's mic.
So
win-win
hold on
screen.
a second, you guys. Let me show you this. So this thing, hey Josh, don't get nervous. Okay. But that thing right there, this little foam thing right here that Chase loves to touch. So there's what's the two names that are actually real?
So the technical
called
term would be a windscreen, but
Windscreen.
nobody in film calls it that. We call them dead cats.
Dead cat. So
This one is not a dead cat.
that's not a dead cat? Okay.
Technically, there's a hairier one that it's kind of like very similar. Dead
Oh,
cat.
when they get really, really furry, that's where the
Yes.
dead cat thing came from. So, Matt, we're going to get
like 'em
you
furry.
a neck dead cat just to make sure that there's no breathing issues.
Either
on
that
any
or
of
we're going to get him a
these.
neck brace.
Neck brace dead cat. Okay, I like it. So, how about this? Let's recap. When you're changing seasons and you're going from one area to the next, it's a really, really good idea to try and check your car. So, check on most UTVs all the radius rod joints. That would be all of these guys right here. Jack the car up and shake the tire. See if any of this stuff is loose, replace it. Shake the tire front to back. You're going to see a tie rod on an X3 on a Polaris. You're just going to be able to check the wheel bearing by doing that. I would also check the brakes. That's a visual thing. Make sure you have enough pad left while you're there. In the front, you're going to shake everything around and find out if you've got bushing, upper and lower control arm issues. If you've got any kind of hub or brake issues, you can find that. You can also find all your steering issues. With the shocks on the vehicle, see if you've got leaks. If you don't have leaks, did it change drastically in the last trip or two where it was riding perfect and all of a sudden bottomed out everywhere? That's a good sign that you might want to have the shocks rebuilt. When you're going from sand to mountain stuff or trail, it's going to be a softer compression system. You want to check your ride heights. when you change from sand tires to off-road, you typically shouldn't be changing preload to go back and forth between tires because we give you different ride heights according to the tire height. But it's a good time to check it and make sure, because in the sand you may not have the toolbox in the back completely loaded with everything. You're not going to have a spare on it. So you go putting dirt tires on it and all of a sudden the thing sits really, or you put dirt tires on it, you put everything back in the chest, you got a spare tire on it again, all of a sudden the back of the car sits a little low, time to adjust ride height. Change of oil, air cleaners, air filters, oil filters, change the belt, check and blow out the clutch assembly, make sure there's nothing in there to worry about. If you have Yamaha, you don't have to worry about any clutch problems.
It's too perfect.
You just have to worry about whether it's going to ride good enough to keep your dentures in. That's about the only thing you have to worry about there. Sorry, Steve. If you do not check everything on a Yamaha,
It will fall off.
that's right. So that's your basics. I know a lot of you guys are like, I know all that, but you know what? A lot of you guys don't. And I just want to stress to check everything as you're looking at it. Mitch.
General maintenance.
General maintenance. We do have a video on our YouTube channel if you guys want to go back, and it's XP Turbo or XP General Maintenance.
I think it's a general. I want to say it's a
one
general.
with
It might
Lolo?
be wrong
Well,
though.
it's not a general, but it might be titled
The one with
XP,
logos and
yes,
XP
yes.
ones.
or
XPT.
General Maintenance.
Yeah.
And you guys can see Lauren giving you a heads up on all the basics that you should do on your UTV. It is specifically on a Polaris, but it can be translated into everything else on any UTV. Add to that maintenance video everything that we've shown you when it comes to hubs and radius rods and steering to check on all of those things. And again, if you don't check any of this stuff that we're talking about, I guarantee you it will
Fall off.
That's right.
So I'm going to
Matt.
throw one more thing in there, sorry.
Do it.
On the lines of checking all of your ball joints and your radius rod ends and all that stuff too, hardware. Hardware is a big thing too. I've seen a lot of guys come up with complaints about like clunking and noises and stuff like that. It's a loose bolt. Can-Am is pretty known for like the radius rod plate and all that hardware coming loose, hollows out the holes, stuff like that.
That would be these guys right
When
here.
you're checking all of that stuff, I mean, even the rod end side of things, your factory joints, anything like that, check the hardware too, make sure that it's tight. Super important along with checking everything else too. If you tighten up a hardware, it eliminates the hollowing of bolt holes, it eliminates a lot of things that happen too. So just another point to throw out to you guys.
Mitchy boy, since we do this to Justin so much, I'm going to throw this out here for you. Off-topic
Me?
question, yes. Fire Pyro 8. Do you guys have any parts coming for the KRX, like race racks or sway bars?
Sway bar, something cool for the sway bar is coming soon. We have links that we are about to release. Video and everything is done for that, but we got something cool in the works for the sway bar on that car, so stay tuned for that. Race racks, we haven't really dug into that much yet, but I'm sure we're planning on doing that. No real time frame on that as of right now, but it is on the list and it is something being thought of. So.
All right, last 30 seconds. You guys got any good questions?
Nope.
Nope.
All right, I'm going to get back to work. I think
too.
everybody else should probably get back to work.
I get back to shipping.
And you know what?
What am I going to do?
You know, Chase, definitely not work because it's not on your list for some reason. I am going to say the only person working on this video right now, definitely not Chase, from this point forward, is Steve. Please take us out.
If you guys are looking to buy anything, visit our website at www.shocktherapist.com or call into the shop at 623-217-4959.
All right.
I kill it every time, dude.
Allie, you're my favorite.